The story of Supergirl doesn't begin with hope. It begins with fire, with a world tearing itself apart, and with a girl who would carry the last breath of Krypton in her heart. Before she was Earth's bright protector, she was Kara Zor-El, and her origin is darker than most people realize. Kara Zor-El was born not as an outsider, but as royalty of Krypton's elite. She was the daughter of Alara Inze and Zor-El, making her cousin to Kal-El, the boy who would become Superman. Unlike Kal, she wasn't just a child when Krypton's doom came. She was old enough to understand. Old enough to watch her world crumble. The explosion of Krypton didn't kill Kara immediately. Because her home city, Argo City, survived. In one of the cruelest twists of fate, Argo was ripped away intact, sealed under a dome of force, and sent drifting into the void of space. The Kryptonians inside were alive, but they were living on borrowed time. At first, hope held them together. Argo City had survived. They had food, water, technology. Perhaps the gods had spared them. But then the ground beneath their feet began to glow. The very bedrock of Argo had turned to kryptonite. The survivors stood upon a ticking poison, a floor that radiated death into their bodies day by day. Zor-El, Kara's father, tried everything to shield the people from the green radiation. Sheets of lead, domes of protection, anything to keep the city alive. But nothing lasted. The poison crept closer, and hope began to die. Kara was forced to watch as her people withered. Neighbors, friends, teachers, even family. One by one, kryptonite sickness claimed them. The once proud city turned into a graveyard floating through the stars. And Kara, she endured it all. The smell of sickness, the silence of abandoned streets, the terror of knowing she might be next. It wasn't just survival. It was trauma, the kind that would never leave her. But her father wasn't finished. With his last strength, Zor-El built a pod. Not for himself, not for his wife, but for Kara. She would escape. She would live. And she would find her baby cousin, Kal-El, who had been sent away before Krypton's end. When the day came, Kara resisted. She didn't want to abandon her parents. Didn't want to leave behind the ashes of Argo. But Alara pressed her hand to Kara's cheek. And with tears in her eyes, she whispered the only truth left. You must carry us with you. The pod launched. Argo City faded into the void. And Kara drifted alone through space. Unlike Kal, who arrived on Earth as an infant with no memory of Krypton, Kara remembered everything. She remembered her parents' faces. She remembered her people's screams. She remembered watching her world die twice. Her journey wasn't a birth of hope. It was an exile carved out of grief. And that grief would shape the Supergirl she was destined to become. When Kara's pod finally tore through Earth's skies, it wasn't destiny she felt. It was disorientation. Fear. Confusion. She had gone to sleep in the cold void of space, surrounded by death and silence. She awoke in the atmosphere of a strange world, under a sun that blazed brighter than any she'd ever known. And that sun changed her. At first, she didn't understand. The yellow sun of Earth filled her cells with energy, twisting her Kryptonian biology into something new. Strength surged through her body. Her skin hardened like steel. Her eyes burned with the potential of fire itself. She stumbled upon this power by accident. A punch that shattered stone. A cry that shook windows. A glance that seared the earth with heat vision. It should have felt like a gift. But for Kara, it felt like a curse. She remembered Krypton's fall. She remembered Argo's slow death. And now, every time she looked at her hands, she saw weapons. Weapons that could destroy just as easily as they could save. Unlike Kal, who had grown up learning to control his powers gently, Kara received them all at once, like a tidal wave. She wasn't raised as Earth's child. She was Krypton's survivor, and that made her dangerous. When she finally met Kal-El, now Superman, the reunion was bittersweet. Kal saw her as the last piece of family he'd thought lost forever. To him, she was a miracle, a sister in spirit, even if not by blood. But Kara didn't see herself as a miracle. She saw herself as broken. Her memories haunted her. Every nightmare brought back the sound of Krypton's implosion, the whispers of the dying in Argo City. She wasn't the symbol of hope her cousin had become. She was a scar. This is why Kara's early days on Earth were darker than people realize. She wasn't ready to smile, to wear a cape, to inspire. She was angry, confused, traumatized. At times, she even resented Cal. Why had he grown up safe, loved, nurtured, while she had endured horror after horror? Why had fate given him the gift of a new beginning, but left her with nothing but grief? The tension simmered between them. Cal tried to teach her control. He tried to guide her, as he had been guided. But Kara wasn't like him. She wasn't learning how to become a hero. She was trying to figure out how not to become a destroyer. And then came the turning point. A mission went wrong. A fire spread across a city block, threatening hundreds of lives. Superman raced to save them, but Kara was closer. For a moment, she froze, memories of Krypton's flames flashing before her eyes. But then, she moved. She tore through steel. She carried families out of collapsing buildings. She used her heat vision not as a weapon, but as a tool, cutting apart wreckage to free the trapped. When it was over, dozens of lives had been saved. And for the first time since Krypton, Kara felt something besides grief. She felt purpose. That moment did not erase her pain. It did not heal the wounds of Argo. But it was the first step. The first time she understood that her powers could be more than echoes of destruction. And though the road was still long, that night Kara Zor-El began her path toward becoming Supergirl. Kara's journey didn't end the night she saved that city. In truth, it had only begun, because being powerful wasn't enough. Being Kryptonian wasn't enough. She had to decide what she would stand for. And that was the hardest choice of all. At first, Kara resisted the name Supergirl. To her, it felt like a shadow, like she would forever be second to Superman, never her own person. But Cal understood something Kara didn't yet see. He knew that symbol, the House of El's crest, was more than a name. It was survival. It was hope. It was the promise that Krypton lived on, even in fragments. And he believed Kara was worthy of carrying it. Still, Kara's road was steep. Her temper flared. Her grief surfaced in battle, making her reckless, sometimes even brutal. The Justice League worried. Could she be trusted with such power? Would she lose herself in rage, the way Krypton had lost itself in arrogance? But each trial forged her further. Each mistake carved a lesson. Each rescue reminded her that her pain didn't have to define her, her choices did. Kara began to embrace her role, not as Superman's shadow, but as her own person. Where Cal inspired through calm and restraint, Kara inspired through fire and determination. She was fierce, unyielding. She refused to back down, even when the odds were impossible. And soon, people began to look up at the skies and whisper not Superman's cousin, but Supergirl. Her darker past never vanished. The memories of Krypton's screams, of Argo's slow death, still lived in her dreams. But instead of breaking her, they fueled her. When she saw suffering, she remembered her own. When she saw injustice, she remembered Krypton's mistakes. And when she saved a life, she carried her parents' sacrifice with her. She wasn't just a survivor. She was their legacy. In time, Kara became more than a symbol. She became a warrior, a leader, a protector of not just Earth, but of all who needed her. She found family among heroes. She found strength in humanity. And most of all, she found peace in knowing she wasn't alone anymore. The origin of Supergirl is not the story of a girl blessed with power. It's the story of a girl scarred by loss, tempered by fire, and reborn with purpose. From the ruins of Krypton, from the ashes of Argo, rose a hero who carries her pain like armor. Not as a shadow of Superman, but as a light all her own. Kara Zor-El, the last daughter of Argo, the girl who became Supergirl.